Elon Musk's X is suing advertisers over an illegal boycott that came to light in the House Judiciary Committee report. Elon seems to be ramping things up as he posted on X yesterday. "We tried for peace for 2 years. Now it is war." So here to break this all down is Allum Bokhari, Foundation for Freedom Online Managing Director. So Allum, thanks so much for joining us. And let's talk about just the big picture. What does this lawsuit mean for free speech?
So X is suing an organization called GARM, the Global Alliance for Responsible Media. And what that is it's a coalition of essentially the entire advertising industry. It represents 90% of ad spending worldwide. So basically the entire industry operating as a kind of cartel. And what it does is it tells you right there in the name, Alliance for Responsible Media. So the industry bands together and it tells website owners and owners of media companies and platform owners like Elon Musk, well, if you don't meet our requirements for brand safety, if the content on your site or your platform doesn't meet our standards for responsible media, then we're just going to pull all our ad revenue and essentially try and put you out of business by taking away this massive revenue funnel. And what's important is that it's the entire industry acting in concert. So, the House Judiciary Committee has focused on that angle because it shows it's anti-competitive. It's the whole industry banding together to set content standards for the entire internet, which is, so dependent on ad revenue. It allows these big advertisers to essentially determine what we can and cannot say.
Allum, great to have you on. I know you were just here recently for 0 Hour with James Polis. Looking forward to watching that. This is such an important issue, near and dear to my heart, of course. And the way I describe this for a lot of businesses is almost like a iron triangle between consulting firms, the advertisers, and then the marketing departments, within the corporations. And all those pieces are woke. I mean, right now, that's what's going on. And it's a terrible, terrible situation. So here we finally have someone, and I'll note, not a normal conservative. Like, this wasn't a conservative company that stood up and did this, but someone who wants to win did this. Now we have someone standing up and fighting this sort of cartel in advertising to keep the flow of dollars out of, in this case, a social media organization. So has this had an effect? Do you think, is this leading the way forward? Are other people following Elon's lead and saying no to this?
So Rumble, obviously a massive video platform, has also filed suit against GARM. That's in addition to the Judiciary Committee's ongoing investigation of the organization. So you really are seeing a lot of pieces coming together for this pushback against the advertising industry's attempts to determine what content is and isn't acceptable on online platforms. And what's interesting, we've been investigating this same organization, the same industry at the Foundation for Freedom Online. We have a couple of reports up on our website, foundationforfreedomonline.com. And one of them shows that, these companies, these ad agencies who are members of GARM are getting billions of dollars from the US taxpayer for things like military recruitment ads and public service announcements and health ads. So, not only are these companies banding together to censor platforms like X, but the U.S. taxpayer is being forced to fund this. U.S. citizens are funding their own censorship. They're the same companies that are pushing for the restriction of their free speech online.
So when you look at this, what would the impact be if they do win? How would they be able to move everything forward?
So I think the key is to, break up this sort of collusive collaboration, right? This anti-competitive banding together of the entire industry in one single cartel. Because when you think about it, the advertising industry is leaving a lot on the table when it doesn't advertise with Rumble, when it doesn't advertise with X, when it doesn't advertise with conservative media. That's millions and millions of eyeballs that they're voluntarily saying, no, we don't want that attention for our brands. We don't want that massive marketplace of attention. And the only way that works really is if all the advertising agencies and all the brands do it at once. Because you can imagine if one advertising agency said, hey, all these other advertisers, all these other brands are boycotting X, I'm going to go and put my ads there and get a much better deal, then the whole system of censorship falls apart.
Yeah, and there's potentially huge opportunity out there when you have this kind of totalizing control, right, in these industries. But I guess my other question is, why did no one do this before? I mean, I can't hammer this enough. It sure seems like this has been going on for a long time. I mean, this has affected our company for a long time. Glenn Beck was one of the first people they did this to, going back before Tucker on Fox News, with advertisers basically boycotting and playing this ridiculous game. But what's alarming to me is, why did it take Elon Musk to sue them and to think of this, legal strategy? And can more people follow his lead and actually be successful?
I think it has been happening for a long time. In fact, in our report on the Foundation for Freedom Online, we point out examples of it going back as far as 2012 and 2013, so over 10 years ago. And I think the reason that happens is because people who are pro-censorship activists realize that with the internet and online platforms so dependent on advertising revenue, and brands often being hesitant to expose themselves to controversy, this has been a real weak point for online free speech, by going after the brands, by frightening them, by saying, oh, you're going to lose business, your brand safety will be impacted if you're on these platforms and your ads are appearing next to this content. They've been able to exploit that, and it really reached a peak, I think, in 2020 and afterwards, because that's when GARM was founded. That's when this cartel emerged and sort of institutionalized the trend that had been happening for the previous 10 years or so.
Now, go ahead.
But I think I want to say one important thing here, which is this concept of brand safety that they always use as the excuse for pulling advertising revenue away from free speech platforms and from alternative media sources. I've actually never seen an example of a mass consumer boycott that happened because a brand's ad appeared on the Blaze or on X or next to an offensive post on social media. But I have seen mass consumer boycotts over things like Gillette's toxic masculinity ad or Bud Light's Dylan Mulvaney ad. There are many examples like that of brands actually losing lots of business and lots of customers because of the advertising industry's own ideological biases. And I think it's those biases that are making them use this excuse of brand safety to pull ads away from conservative platforms, alternative platforms, and free speech platforms. But I don't think they've demonstrated that there's actually a danger of consumer backlash if their ads did appear on alternative media or did appear on free speech platforms.
No, but what's ridiculous is businesses, large corporations, even owned by purported conservatives, will have, woke CMOs and people who will pay millions of dollars to get consultants in media, the supposed experts, who will tell them to their face over and over again that they have to do this. If they don't reach these populations and these identities, they won't sell their product. And it's completely ridiculous. Now, I do firmly believe a lot of these businesses want to break out, but they're stuck. For a place like Blaze, not only are we dealing with this, but this demonetizes us, right? This sort of activity takes away millions of dollars that could be going to the kind of programming our audience so desperately needs and wants. But for a lot of other companies, it's more just taking opportunity off the table, right? If they're not in media directly, it takes an opportunity away from them to get to a large audience that happens to lean right in some cases. Do you have any experience with that? Have you done any research on where businesses stand on this? Do they have strong opinions about it? Is this, in other words, is just the cartel crushing them?
I think businesses have just this habit of trusting the big advertising agencies and trusting these so-called experts on brand safety to tell them where it is and isn't safe to advertise. And we've seen organizations like NewsGuard crop up in the last half decade or so with the rise of online censorship that does the same thing. They build whitelists and blacklists of news companies, and then they sell those whitelists and blacklists to the advertising industry, to advertising agencies, essentially presenting themselves as experts on where it is and isn't safe to advertise. But these so-called experts on brand safety, who go and tell businesses that they have their finger on the pulse of public sentiment, is the same people who are responsible for disasters like the Bud Light ad and the Gillette toxic masculinity ad. They don't have their finger on the pulse of public sentiment. They don't know what brand safety is, and yet that's their excuse for demonetizing wide swathes of the entire internet and for cutting brands off from these huge consumer markets that they say are too unsafe.